to sit really far away from us.
It's bad. It's not good. In with King.
Jean Cloutier just said, out with Derues, in with King. Maybe a future mayoral race. That'd be a good slogan. So welcome to the third Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management. My name is Scott Moffat, and I will be your chair for this morning's proceedings. In case you were unaware, my name's right there. I'm just trying to find something. Oh, here it is. No, that's not it.
Are you playing for time?
No, I'm just looking up something on my computer. All right, so first things first, I do want to welcome Ralston King to our committee. This is his first official committee meeting as a city councillor, so welcome, Ralston. So no applause in the committee room. That's a rule. I don't want to make exceptions, even though it's for Ralston. I just want to be clear on that so people don't think I'm cherry picking when it comes to what I allow cheering for. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, you only care, they don't cheer against you. No, if I allowed it all, we'd be here forever. Did you just boo Catherine McKinney? Something that I was speaking about with, on Twitter recently too was that there's a cutoff button on these microphones. So someone was surprised that Catherine was cut off at council, but I can do it. So if she speaks today, I have full intention to
press. Could you show us how the cutoff?
So the cutoff button works like that.
Excellent.
So yeah, there you go. He learned. I have no problem doing that. So welcome. This is our third meeting of the term. We had to cancel our May meeting, unfortunately, but we have two meetings back to back this month. So just should mention Councillor Hubley and Councillor Derues sent their regrets for this morning's meeting. Declarations of interest. Seeing none. Confirmation minutes for our meeting from Tuesday, April 16th.
Carried.
Are those carried? You can't carry those because you were out there. You weren't officially a part of us. But now we've sucked you in. Welcome to the dark side. What? Oh, she's talking amongst herselves. One meeting going on here, Catherine, one meeting. If you want to talk to Riley, you can talk to him after the meeting. Or you can just leave. I'll have quorum without you, so be gone. I do want to highlight first, oh, this is full. Am I okay? I'm always fine. Yeah, I get a lot of sleep. So I do want to highlight that we have these great water bottles here. I drink tap water. So at the Doors Open Ottawa, I believe Tammy is here. We handed out a number of these at Lemieux Island, at the Lemieux Island plant, and as well as we have pins as well, the I Drink Tap Water pins. So of course, as we always indicate here, we have the best drinking water in the world, which will feed in to an agenda item this morning. So thank you for these. I do have my own water bottle. There's not water in there. I don't drink though, so it's not alcohol. Just relax. Everyone, just calm down. All right, so item number one. Status update, Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management, inquiries and motions for the period ending June 7th, 2019. Is that item received?
Carried.
Thank you. Item number two is the Eastern Subwatersheds Stormwater Management Retrofit Study. We do have a presentation on that one. So we're going to have that. Well, there's been a lot of effort put into the file. It's a big thing for the eastern part of the city, which even though many of us aren't from the eastern part of the city, the Eastern Bloc, we still care about them at times. So item number 3, I think we have a presentation on that too, if I'm not mistaken. The 2019-2022 City of Ottawa Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan. So hold that. And item number 4 is a councillor's item, single-use plastic bottles at city facilities. That was originally an inquiry which came to the April 16th meeting, but is now on the agenda, and I know Councillor McKenney has a motion to deal with that, and we also have speakers on that item. So we will go back to, oh, we have another item too. Do you want to do that right now? Yeah, we have another item too, just in follow-up to our April meeting about the climate change sponsor group. So, well, it's moved by Councillor Menard, but I'll just get right to it instead. No, it's okay. It's just adding the members. So it's so pretend I'm like super tall right now. So therefore, be it resolved that Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend Council approve the following membership for the Council Climate Change Sponsors Group. Councillor Scott Moffats, that's me. Chair of, actually it's not me because I'm not moving it, it's Sean that's moving it, sorry. Chair of the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management, as the representative for the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management. Councillor Laura Dudas as the representative for Planning Committee. Yeah, let me just read it first. I want to make sure that before we approve the addition that we all know what exactly we're approving. Councillor Matthew Fleury as representative for Transportation Committee. Councillor Janice Sudds as representative for Transit Commission. Councillor Teresa Kavanagh as representative for the Ottawa Board of Health. And Councillor Sean Menard as the Councillor Liaison as per the motion. So approve that we add the item on the agenda. Okay. And then on the motion, any questions about the membership? So the question from Councillor Brock is how did we circulated, so the clerk's office circulated interest. So the motion itself did prescribe Councillor Menard as a member, and then we circulated the interest for the other committees, and a number of councillors brought forward their interest for the committee, and we worked through that. So on that motion?
Carried.
Carried, good. So the council change, sometimes I want a council change sponsors group. The climate change sponsors group is approved. All right, so we'll go back to item number 2, which is the Eastern Sub-Watersheds study. Next, and this is an item that affects a number of wards, so Orleans, Innis, Gloucester, Southgate, Beacon Hill, Sayreville, Rideau, Rockcliffe, Alta Vista, and Cumberland.
Chair Moffat, my name is Laurent Joliet. I am a water resource engineer and I work for the Stormwater Operation Unit in Public Works and Environmental Services. At the table with me today is Chris Rogers, Program Manager for the Infrastructure Planning Unit in the Planning Department. I am now going to give a 5-minute presentation on the Eastern Subwatershed Stormwater Management Retrofit Study. The recommendations of the report are that committee recommend Council approve the results of a retrofit plan and recommend Council approve the filing of the retrofit study for the 30-day public review period. The Eastern Subwatershed Stormwater Management Retrofit Study is one of the 17 projects that comprise the Ottawa River Action Plan, ORAP, adopted by Council in 2010. ORAP identified that the impacts of uncontrolled stormwater runoff must be addressed. Key objectives of ORAP are to reduce beach closures and maintain a healthy aquatic ecosystem. A similar retrofit study was completed for the Pinecrest Creek Westboro subwatersheds and endorsed by Council in 2011. The combined sewage storage tunnel is another ORAP project intended to significantly reduce the frequency of sewer overflows to the Ottawa River. The study area covers a total of approximately 15,000 hectares, including the following subwatersheds: Voyageur Creek, Bilberry Creek, Taylor Creek, and the urban tributaries of Greens Creek. Most of the area was developed prior to stormwater management requirements, meaning that very little or no stormwater management control is provided within the study area. Based on a detailed assessment of existing condition, the lack of stormwater management controls have resulted in poor water quality in the creeks and at Petrie Island Beach, stream bank erosion, and degraded aquatic habitat. In order to mitigate the impact of uncontrolled development, a stormwater management retrofit plan was developed. The retrofit plan consists of adding measures into established older neighborhoods that were built without the infrastructure to properly manage stormwater. Retrofit measures are designed to capture the runoff, filtrate it, infiltrate it, and/or slowly release it to the receiving system. Retrofit measures are typically classified in 3 categories depending on their location. The first line of protection is what we call lot-level measures, which are small-scale measures such as rain gardens, permeable pavers, or downspout redirect. Those measures are located at the source of the runoff, or at the lot level. The second type of measures is called conveyance measures. Those measures are implemented where the water is conveyed between the lot and the outlet, usually along the municipal right-of-way. Examples of conveyance measures are bioretention, infiltration trenches, and grass swales. The third type of retrofit measures is called end-of-pipe measures. There are larger scale facilities that receive the runoff collected by the conveyance system. They are located just upstream of the outlet to the receiver. Examples of end-of-pipe measures are typically wet ponds, infiltration galleries, and/or oil grid separators. When retrofit measures are not sufficient to mitigate the impact of urbanization, in-stream protection measures may be required to address erosion issues. The preferred retrofit scenario to the eastern subwatersheds is based on a 50-year horizon and includes the implementation of lot-level measures on 30% of private and public properties and the implementation of conveyance measures on 50% of public right-of-ways. It also includes a number of stream restoration measures. The proposed retrofit plan is intended to provide directions to achieve a long-term vision. That said, the initial focus will be on moving forward in 5 years increments. To do so, we have developed an initial 5-year implementation plan that includes the remediation of 15 priority erosion sites, the promotion of lot-level measures, and a number of investigations to track the source of E. coli. The total cost estimate for the initial 5-year plan is $4.23 million, and we expect to use existing budget authority available for this implementation. Once implemented, the recommended retrofit plan will improve water quality in the local creeks and the Ottawa River, reduce erosion in the creeks, improve the health of the creeks, contribute to reduce closures at Petrie Island Beach to approximately 40% of reduction of E. coli. From a consultation point of view, we reached out to the public at 3 occasions. We presented the preliminary results at a water roundtable event in June 2014 and presented the results of the study during 2 online information sessions in 2014 and 2018. We established direct communication with community associations in the study area, and our records show that there has been over 1,300 views on the study's webpage, although minimal feedback was received. Following council approval, a notice of completion will be posted for 30-day review period according to the Ontario Municipal Class E process. We will then begin the implementation of the initial 5-year plan, and we expect to report back to committee by 2024 to provide a status update. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, I thought it was important to highlight this here today. I know that through the Ottawa River Action Plan, we get a lot of focus on the combined sewer storage tunnel, but there's obviously a lot of other projects as a part of that action plan that help us achieve the goals set out by council many years ago. especially when you're talking about Petrie Island and some of the challenges that we have there every summer. Any questions to, yes, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. With your indulgence, my question is somewhat related, but not exact to the report, and that is with respect to the creeks in my ward that actually do not flow into the Ottawa River, but flow into the Rideau River, the Sawmill Creek, there's Uplands Creek, there's 3 stormwater ponds sort of in the south end of Riverwood, the Sawmill Creek, which we now call the Wendy Stewart Ponds, the Quintera Riverwood stormwater ponds, which is right beside the river, and there's a little one by Hackett. How can I get a better understanding from you, not today, but in the future, about the water quality that goes through these creeks, how effectively those ponds are working to filter pollutants and sediments before the water goes into the actual river? Can I get that type of information?
Chair Moffat, in answer to that question, I'll provide two sides of the answer. First, we've completed a retrofit study for the Eastern Subwatershed area and as well for the Pinecrest Creek area. Moving forward, we expect to complete a citywide retrofit study for the remaining of the urban core of the city. And as part of this exercise, we are going to monitor the water quality in the creek, assess the erosion, and provide the recommendations to in the same nature of what was done for the Eastern Subwatershed study. The other side is the performance of each individual stormwater management facility. The city is monitoring every facility that we own, and we are maintaining it, monitoring, operating it. And in case of deficiency, we have a team, we have staff who are going back and trying to retrofit these infrastructure to ensure they are meeting their objectives.
So just so I'm clear, you're saying that all stormwater ponds are monitored by the city, and what type of data is publicly available? What does the data actually say?
Chair Moffat, in response to that question, we monitor each pond to a different level. Sometimes we only monitor the amount of sediments in the pond. Sometimes we do more extensive monitoring in terms of water quality when there's a need. And we will take measures to empty those sediments as required. And the other part of the data availability form. And we have reports that are associated with the monitoring of those ponds that are available for the public to review.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Looks good to me. There's one question around lot level measures that I had for you. I think that's important. It says we're going to encourage private homeowners or renters to increase their lot level measures, which is sort of the first phase that we can tackle. What are we doing to encourage that sort of behavior? Is there any incentive program or something that we're trying to encourage them to switch over to rain barrels as an example? How will we do that?
Chair, in response to that question, in the staff report, we've included a table with the detail, or I would say a high-level approach of what we will be doing moving forward in order to promote the implementation of lot-level measures. And the item 2 on this table indicates that we will complete a demographic analysis, social market research, and the development of comprehensive outreach program to support implementation of lot-level control. In terms of incentive, we do recognize that this is an important aspect that in moving forward, there's a good chance that we will need to put a program, incentive program. We are not there yet. The recommendations from the report are very high level, but based on experience from other municipalities in Ontario, it seems like incentive program might be very useful in trying to promote those lot level measures.
Yeah, the reason I raise it is there's a lot of very simple, low-cost things that people can do to save water, and water equates to energy at the end of the day, especially hot water, right? And so things like tap cartridges or your shower head or having a rain barrel. There's incentivization that goes on in other cities where they offer a very minor incentive to purchase a rain barrel, and it actually helps the city. As an example, this for the eastern watersheds, this would be helpful. So I think as part of maybe the climate change emergency sponsors group, we can raise that there as well, because I think these are really important things to be doing that are just very simple and low cost for the municipality that has returns for the city and homeowners. So thanks for the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cloutier?
Councillor Menard asked my question. Thank you.
All right, apparently Councillor Menard asked Councillor Cloutier's questions. Any other questions for staff on this? Seeing none, thank you for your work on this and appreciate and you're following up in 5 years, so I don't know who's going to be here. So I won't say see you then. Okay, great. So on that item, is that carried? Received, I think?
Carried.
I lost my thing. Just bear with me.
Yeah, there's a motion.
I lost my electronic agenda. We're good. I got it. Right, so that we approve the preferred Eastern Subwatershed Stormwater Management Retrofit Plan as described herein and listed as document 8, and 2, approve the filing of the Eastern Subwatershed Stormwater Management Retrofit Study for 30-day public review period in accordance with Ontario Environmental Assessment Act.
Carried.
Carried, thank you. Item number 3, we have a presentation, no speakers, but we have a presentation on this as well, and it's the 2019 to 2022 City of Ottawa Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan. So we have Dan Chenier here to speak. Now this one's about a different kind of retrofits.
Good morning, Chair. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président. Good morning, members of the committee. I'm here presenting today on the city's new plan, the next 5-year plan, as well as a report on our accomplishments over the last 5 years. With me is Blake Stratton, who is one of the small team working in our BEAM group on energy projects. A lot of the work that you'll hear today was largely done through the BEAM group. Let me just get this going here. The reason we're before you today in part is that provincial legislation dating as far back as 2009, the Green Energy Plan, and then subsequent reiterations in '98 and more recently by the new government, require the city to report out every 5 years on its energy management accomplishments, as well as on its plans for the next 5 years. And so we dusted off the document that was prepared in 2014 as an overall comment. I can tell you that the 2014 plan had a much more pronounced focus on saving energy costs and less so on greenhouse gas emissions and initiatives to reduce that. Bear in mind, this was in the context of energy management and provincial directions. However, for the new plan, what we're proposing for the coming 5 years, we have attempted to strike a better balance between energy reductions and greenhouse gas emission reductions as well, so that it's a little bit more robust on both sides of that. And so, let me just make sure that I'm, one more? Okay. The report that you have before you and that is included on the slides reports out that over the last 5 years we have reduced the city's total energy use by 5.8%. I can say just from recent recalculations of this number that we're actually exceeding that. We are closer to the 6.7% reduction, with electricity coming in at 7.2% reduction, and gas at 6.3. We will be revising the report that we post on the city website for provincial purposes to reflect this, this accomplishment. Bear in mind that the reductions that were achieved over the last 5 years were in the context of a city that is growing, and even though our energy reductions have declined, we have added some fairly large energy-intensive facilities to the city's inventory in that time. Places like the Ridgecraft Recreation Complex, Minto Barhaven, Francois Dupree, the new Ottawa Art Gallery, and so on. And so the accomplishment is, in spite of those increased energy demands for new facilities, we have nonetheless been able to accomplish some reductions through energy management initiatives. We have worked very closely with Enviri, which is part of our Hydro Ottawa, as our partner. They have undertaken just under 100 projects on our behalf as part of a master agreement that we have that goes well beyond just the street lighting conversion program that you may be aware of Enviri undertaking, into building retrofits, building improvements to achieve these savings. Last term of council, as part of your strategic term of council plan, you had approved $1 million per year as part of the term of council strategic plan. This is what has fueled these initiatives, supplemented by several instances where either the city or Enviri have been able to secure provincial, federal, and other incentive programs to supplement that. As you know, one of the key pieces of this has been the street lighting conversion program, which is now 61% complete. 35,700 out of the 58,000 street lights have been converted to LED. Examples of some projects. One of the key things that we've looked at in city buildings is the development of a centralized, excuse me, a centralized control system for environmental controls. So systems that centrally will control things like HVAC, lighting, and key operating systems to allow the optimization of energy. The platform currently, and this is essentially a baked-at-home type system that has taken what at Amalgamation and from our past took 35 different vendors, 15 different control companies, and put them all on one platform. We currently have 122 sites on this platform, with plans to add more as part of our new plan. A new initiative during this term was the reduction of water use from splash pads. The city invested $50,000 to realize $147,000 annual water savings through retrofitting of our splash pads, cut down water use by 37,000 cubic meters. And then, of course, energy evolution has been a key piece of not only the city's work in managing energy, primarily led by our planning group, but it has been able to harness up to 50 community groups, 100 different individuals in terms of community action to reduce overall energy. The city has participated in photovoltaic solar systems. We now have them on 12 of our larger buildings. That is now producing 2,500 kilowatts of clean hydro into the provincial grid. What you see here is perhaps a reflection that in 2014 we were not very good at predicting targets over a 5-year period. As you will see, in terms of electricity, we achieved 20-fold our original target in terms of reducing electrical needs. Natural gas and water also were successfully overachieved their targets in terms of reductions in use. The next slide that you see is a energy performance index. This chart shows you the results of monitoring energy performance at 336 of the city's buildings, essentially any building over 100 square meters, 1,000 square feet, so anything from a small field house up to large complexes. And what this shows is that overall, under this energy performance index, we have reduced our estimated kilowatts usage significantly over those years, from 380 to 358. This is the first slide that addresses electricity and gas, and our recommendation to you to increase the payback on energy projects from what was approved in 2014, which was 5.5 years with the real focus on electrical savings and reducing our electricity bills, to an 8-year payback period. And what this chart shows is that our total electricity cost is quite a bit higher than our gas costs. However, in terms of greenhouse gases directly produced by the city, the bulk of what we're producing is through our use of gas, not our use of electricity. And what this really means is that we need to shift away from simply doing electrical retrofits, and some of the easy projects in the earlier years, or easier projects, was conversion to LED lighting, and we did a lot of those. But doing some of the more expensive projects that take a little bit longer to recover, things like building control systems and retrofitting buildings, are more expensive but have a more direct impact on reducing greenhouse gases. And so what we're recommending is that for the next 5 years, we increase the payback period from 5.5 years to 8 years. And that doesn't mean that all our projects will be 8 years. This is a blended basket of projects, some that take 1 or 2 years, some that could take 10 or 12 years or even beyond, but that on average we look at an 8-year period. So just a simple demonstration of going from electricity cost savings to GHG reductions. We think this is more in line with where Council is going with its initiatives and with the climate change initiatives, energy evolutions. And we also think it's critical to start heading in this direction if we are going to meet the goals that Council has set for itself in terms of greenhouse gases. The next few slides show some examples of some of the projects we want to undertake. I mentioned that the building automation systems, we now have 122 sites. We would like to add at least another 50 over the next 4 years in order to realize some of those savings from having good automatic controls on our buildings, as well as things like deeper retrofits in conjunction with some of the life cycle work that the city is doing, things like heat recovery ventilators, upgrades to boilers and furnaces to condensing types, heat pumps, solar panels, those kinds of things. We're talking about significant technical upgrades where the financial justification really is there to select better replacements for what exists now. We're also looking at, in some cases, where we have gas boilers moving to electric boilers in Class A buildings, because now with the rate structure of buildings, and the city only has a few of these, but Class A buildings, at some periods, it's actually cheaper to switch to electricity for those periods of time. So we have some plans to do that. We also thought it important to mention the climate change and resiliency group. Some of the initiatives that aren't necessarily my department's project initiatives, but are part of the city's overall plan to deal with things like climate change and greenhouse gases, to reflect this on the provincial report that we are posting, so that a more global awareness of all of the initiatives are there. To mention that the city's official plan will look at energy, that a separate energy paper has been undertaken, and then, of course, that we will continue with some of the LED conversions, finish the street lighting. We have talked to Envari, and we are looking at deepening our partnership with Envari to fund several other projects through the master contract that we have with them, and we see some great opportunities to advance a lot of the work that's already been undertaken. And so, Chair, really the document that that was provided with this will be posted on the web. I believe an early version may already be, and there will be some tweaks to it, as I mentioned today, as our 5-year commitment. And we are currently now, with the 2019 budget, having approved $3 million per year over the 4 years, so $12 million. We have assembled a list of projects valued at approximately $15 million now, and are in the process of applying some rigor to prioritizing the projects. That was a recommendation of the Auditor General, that we take a broader corporate look at the projects that we're undertaking. And so we have assembled a group of internal partners to develop some priority lists for the projects that we'll be doing. Not just for 2019, some of those projects have already started, but also for the next 4 years, based on the $12 million that Council has approved, and also based on the likelihood that, like in the previous term, we will qualify, we will certainly apply and will likely qualify for federal, provincial, FCM, a variety of possible sources for energy retrofits and GHG projects that could benefit the city. So I'll leave it at that if you have questions.
All right, thank you. And just to, I know Envari, you mentioned Envari. Just for those who may not know, Envari is formerly known as Energy Ottawa. So they are part of Hydro Ottawa, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the City of Ottawa. So we fully own Envari, and we've worked with them previously on the LED conversions across the city. And I do believe there's more opportunity to work with them on some of these building retrofits. Obviously, we can do some in-house, but possibly work with them to coordinate some more, advancing some more works going forward. You mentioned as well, just before we get to questions, the splash pad reduction. Are we looking at that further? I know in the City of Ottawa we have, what, 117 splash pads? You know, it's quite significant, and oddly enough, splash pads are somewhat environmentally unfriendly, whereas other cities have, like Syracuse, which Greater Syracuse area is about 700,000 people. They've got 3 splash pads. So incredible that we can offer these to our residents, but at the same time, there is a massive waste of water. So I found it interesting that you were talking about the retrofits for those. Are we advancing that further to find more water savings?
Yes, we would like to do another series. This was a pilot just to see how well it would strike a balance between saving water and still being a fun piece of equipment in parks. And the modifications that were made did not seem to impact in any way the play value of these. So yes, the opportunity and the return on investment is, I think, threefold in terms of the initial capital outlay versus the water savings. And so yes, we are looking to expand that.
That's good, because I mean, I think that a lot of our residents see benefit in those splash pads. We'd hate to get to a situation where we just organize staff to throw water balloons at people to save water. That's an option. But anyways, so questions, everyone, pretty much? All right, I'll just pick and choose who I want to go to first. Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you, Chair. Just on your question with splash pads, splash pads take, versus a wading pool, a splash pad uses less water than what is put into a wading pool on a daily basis, does it not?
This has been, Chair, this has been a debate for some years in terms of actual water. Some of our very large splash pads that are very busy probably have comparable water use. I'm thinking of some of the larger district splash pads. Certainly the smaller ones that are, the nice thing is that the water is only activated when somebody wants to use it. And so by and large, yes, but there are some exceptions where the larger, more district-based that are very busy and use a lot, relatively more water, probably get into a comparable zone.
Okay, but water is reused. The recent one at Sherrill Park, water is
No, water is not reused in wading pools or in splash pads. It's, we have looked at the technology to reuse splash pad water by holding tanks and sanitization. We did this as part of a couple of years ago where there was a requirement to connect the sanitary sewers, which became very expensive. And the conclusion was that except for very extreme cases, it's, the additional cost is just too high.
Okay, thank you. Et merci pour votre présentation. In 2014, the expected payback was 5.5 years, and I recognize that they were simpler projects, the low-hanging fruit, that we might call it, but that we overachieved on that, on that payback. Could you tell us what the payback actually was, the payback period?
We did not necessarily overachieve on the payback. The overachievement was on how much we thought we would save in terms of kilowatt hours or equivalent kilowatt hours in terms of natural gas. We overachieved in that area. We have undertaken projects that were 5.5 years or had targeted to have 5.5 years and have achieved some of those. We have not tracked project by project, whether it was paid back through savings, because then you're down to analyzing a particular project, the energy use before and the energy use after for that specific location or piece of equipment. We have not done that level of analysis, so I could not tell you with any degree of certainty. We think that by and large we have achieved the 5.5 years for the projects that were targeted at that. We have done some that will take longer than that, simply by the nature of the project, and we have done some that have taken less. What we're recommending now to go to 8 is to allow for the blend of projects to include some more of the deeper retrofits so that the expectation on returns is a little bit longer, allows us to invest a little bit more, but in addition to potentially saving energy, also allows us to reduce greenhouse gases more directly.
And I understand that, and I'm only interested in terms of our predictive abilities and our ability to administer these projects better, and how we can learn from an administrative point of view from what we thought in the past and how we can apply it to future. I recognize how the electricity costs per unit more than natural gas, but that the greenhouse gas emissions from electricity are much less. Does that take into account, and Hydro Ottawa has the Chaudière Falls, and we produce electricity, but most of our electricity comes from OPG, correct? Ontario Power Generation. And does it take into account the GHGs that they, in their water and nuclear and renewal, but they also have natural gas plants that produce electricity. Does it take that into account?
Yes, it does. The GHG factors we use are based on provincial numbers. So they would take into account the electricity mix that we do have that's supplied to us provincially, not necessarily exactly what we get in Ottawa perhaps, but on a provincial basis, yes.
So the full environmental impact of producing that unit of energy.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a few questions that were focused on the implementation of the building automation system, I guess the integrated platform throughout the city. I know that you said you identified 122 sites that are being used. What is that in terms of a percentage of buildings that the city has that are actually on the building automation system?
Chair, not a number that we've been asked before. Generally, these systems are installed, priority has been for our larger buildings where there is some value in investing. We have about 800 buildings in the city, but everything from 1,000 square foot buildings to 200,000 square foot buildings. And obviously we have started with the larger ones, and most of them now have some portion or all of the building on the system. But I guess certainly something I could get back to you on. I don't know at which point in terms of smallness of building we would stop, and so I don't think it's 122 out of 800. It may be 122 out of 500 or 400. That piece I don't know, have not been asked, but we'd be happy to give you at least an estimate of it.
I'd appreciate that, and I understand that, you know, it makes sense to do that work at a certain, once you get to a certain threshold of square footage, so that does make sense. I was also curious about the percentage of energy savings that you are receiving from the deployed building automation systems.
10% for electricity and 15% for gas is what my technical expert tells me.
Do we think that that's optimal, since I know when building automation systems are optimized, often buildings can get 30% cost savings?
Probably not optimal. Usually the 15% is the easiest, the next. We have a whole variety of infrastructure, some of it aging, some of it you know, beyond what you can control with building automation. There are issues with air infiltration, poor insulation, design issues. We probably could achieve more. There is in this report mention of retrofits and retro commissioning of buildings. We have a lot of buildings that were intended for one purpose, a ward garage or something like that, a fire station that have been turned into a community center or an admin center. And in those buildings, simply because the design was not for what the intent currently is, there are probably some limits in just what we're able to control with building controls. But certainly we want to look at those sites and look at how to improve that, and that will likely be through further retrofits of those buildings, and in some cases recommissioning what has been done to the building to put it into its current state.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chenier. Can you tell me why we didn't release a draft to the public and solicit their input before this came to this committee? I note in your report there was no consultation done.
Our understanding is that this has always been an internal report of the city's essentially tombstone data on accomplishments. We were, and so I don't think we ever thought this was something that the public would have input on. It is essentially the data that has accumulated over the last 5 years. The other more practical issue is that it came to light that this report had to be posted to the web by July 1st, sometime in mid-April, I believe. And so just the task of gathering corporate data, because even though my department took the lead on this in terms of pulling it together, we've had to go to environmental services and OC Transpo and a variety of internal sources. And so time was a factor. The report is intended to be posted, and in fact that's the provincial requirement, to be posted on the web to inform the public. The public can of course react and ask questions about what we are doing, but they were not consulted in pulling together the information.
Okay, and I wasn't implying that we needed to consult on our accomplishments over the past years, more so the plan going forward. Just correct me if I'm wrong, do you have actual projected or estimates on GHG reductions for the next 4 or 5 years? Do you have an actual
Yes, Chair, the projects, the $15 million worth of projects that I've outlined to you all have connected to them the expected GHG reductions tied to those projects. So from that perspective, we are able to say, if we do these things, these are the reductions that we can expect.
Okay, that's good. Is there any progress with the downtown federal government energy initiative? Can you just elaborate on that, if you know what I mean?
District heating?
Yes.
Chair, we have been in discussions for about 2 years with the federal government on the possibility of connecting City Hall to the system. We are still in discussions for City Hall, and I believe the main library people working on the main library are also talking about it. At this point, there are still some issues to resolve in terms of upfront capital costs to connect City Hall and the actual performance of the system versus our current costs. Primarily the issue is that the heating is still more expensive under the new system, and cooling is close, but it probably would not make sense to do cooling and not heating from this system. So we're still doing work in terms of trying to arrive at something for this, and probably will be another little bit in terms of negotiations before we have a course forward.
And just to jump in on that, I know Steve Willis has been working on that as well. And just to be clear, it's not just the cost concerns. There are also environmental concerns that it's not as good as what we might think it should be. So this is not something that we're going to jump into just from a cost perspective. It's also to make sure that it makes sense environmentally for the city, and that it is efficient, and that it does actually improve our bottom line in terms of GHGs, because it might not.
Just on that, on your previous comment, will it be easier to connect the not yet built central library versus this already built City Hall? Or are the issues that you're struggling with the same?
I would suspect so, but Mr. Gonche is here, and I believe he has firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, Chair, as part of the library project and our commitment to council, we are looking at the business case of including or considering district energy. We're still going through that process right now, but as Mr. Cheney indicated, there are challenges with where district energy is at this stage, and also the commitment that we made to council as part of the library project in terms of achieving LEED Gold certification as a minimum, which in its current state, district energy would not allow us to be able to achieve those targets. So we need to better understand what is part of phase 2 before we're able to finalize that assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Menard?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. So this is very exciting work. I'm excited by it because it's one of the only things in the municipality where you can do an upfront capital expenditure and have some savings later on while having social good come with it as well. And so this is the type of thing we need to be investing in. So I commend your work. Thanks for what you've done over the last 5 years. How many people are actually on the BEAM team? What is the total? Is it 4 or 5 FTEs?
We have 5 people working on energy retrofits. There are a few other staff that are doing other work, but in terms of the retrofits, it's 5.
Okay. And one of the interesting things in other cities around the country is some of them, they recoup savings. It goes into a central pot, essentially, from savings from that team. And then they're able to use those savings to do other retrofits that would then reduce our emissions further and save us more money. And so do ours just go back, like the savings we're achieving, are those just going back essentially into general revenue, that $2 million a year we were talking about? Or is there a pot that we're compiling them in to then use for further retrofits?
Currently, the savings go to essentially the energy bottom line, which happens to be in my department as well. Okay. So in a sense, I do get to keep the savings and reflect it. However, it doesn't go back into capital investments into more energy projects at this point. The city has created a new centralized energy office that will look at the financial model for the city's utilities, how we pay the bills, and how we finance all of this. That is something that's just being set up right now. And, alternative ways of approaching the financing of this, I think, is one of the things that will need to be looked at.
Okay. We have to be doing a lot more of this work in the city. And so the $1 million investment per year was not nearly enough. $3 million is an improvement, but it's still not enough because of if you're achieving savings over 5 or 8 years, that return is fantastic. So we need to be doing a lot more of this, and I think our investment needs to be there as well. And there's other ways to do it where the city isn't necessarily investing the capital. So I know Hydro Ottawa has made an offer. They've said to us, look, we'll do some deep retrofits for you on some buildings. And I think we should be potentially looking at that. If we don't want to invest the capital ourselves with our low interest rates, they'll have a bit higher interest rates than we do. We should still be looking at that as this term, and I suspect our councillor sponsors group will talk about it, but that's certainly one of the initiatives that we should be looking at for some upfront costs. The top 2 emissions in the City of Ottawa are transportation, so mostly our transit fleet, and then our buildings, right? So this is why I think this is our huge opportunity here to both do savings and lower our GHGs. It's not just the street lighting either, right? It's also traffic lights, is that correct? We're converting traffic lights to LED, I believe. I was at the facility not too long ago, and I think they also mentioned that.
Chair, not under our program, although I think some of that may be happening. We are looking at street lights, parking lot lights, sports field lights. So those kinds of pathway park lighting, those kinds of things. We haven't gone into the traffic domain because that has been primarily Mr. Landry and his team, but we are looking at just about everything else in terms of interior and exterior of buildings, parkland, all of those things.
Okay, yeah, no, I think they have started converting some of the street lights. There was an issue because of the snow and melting the snow, and the other lights were hot and these ones are not, so they had to put a cover. Anyway, but I think they are doing that. I just want to get back to the notion of the cost benefit here too, because you sort of said, we're switching from things like switching over to natural gas to save some costs and moving to some electricity output for lower GHG emissions. I think we need to make sure we're focusing on both. it really is important to look at things like air source heat pumps, right? You know, those are equivalent to natural gas. They make them in cold climates now too, down to -25. It won't work everywhere, but in a lot of our facilities, those are the sorts of things that I want to see. And so when you're talking about deep retrofits to buildings, what is our barrier right now to doing that? I understand there's a closure of facilities to do deep retrofits. Is that the biggest barrier that we're talking about, or what is it?
It's a variety of things depending on the inventory you're talking about. Some of it is to try to coordinate it with life cycle projects so that we're not replacing too much of the city's equipment or way ahead of time. Because we've had a fairly aggressive life cycle program, some of our boilers and air exchangers and those kinds of things have been replaced but are not necessarily, they could use to be retrofitted for better energy, but often we are pacing it to make sense with the life cycle program. Some of it is taking too many facilities out of commission too quickly. We've talked to Hydro Ottawa about that because with their more aggressive borrowing program to finance some of this, it really does put a pressure on things like swimming pools and arenas and community centers where you can't have them all or half of them closed at one time. So we do have to have the, you know, unlike street lighting where you can just go down a street and do it and you're done and it disturbs for a short time, some of the other retrofits close facilities for 6 or 8 months and create you know, some real service issues type of thing. So we're trying to find a balance between a higher spend and deeper retrofits, but maintain a level of service that is still good enough for people to say this is worth moving forward on.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to close some facilities to do this type of work.
Yep.
It's too important not to do it, and there is going to be some pain to do it, but that's important enough that it's worth it. And so I think we need to be moving in that direction. The FCM programs that are online now, some of them are for affordable housing, retrofits, others are direct to renters and homeowners, is my understanding, through municipalities. So it's important with these programs to be up on the first tranche of new money that comes in. It's the first application tranche. So is the city working directly with FCM staff and the Green Municipal Fund program to make sure that we're on the first go around of applications?
Chair, we are just starting to. We've had a look. It appears that there are 2 phases to their application process. An August 1st phase to essentially pre-apply to give them an idea of what we would propose. So that's for August 1st, and then an October 1st one for projects that, as I understand, will be by invitation, in that on August 1st we've convinced them that what we want to do is aligns with what their priorities are, and then you are invited to apply. We're still trying to understand there appears to be a loan and grant portion to what they are doing, and we're still trying to understand what the loans are, at what interest rates, and how it turns into a grant possibly. So we're working out the finer details. We are aware that they're out there and that there is a deadline looming.
Okay, yeah. I mean, normally they combine a loan and the grant to have a lower interest rate overall for doing it. It would probably be fairly low. It's a pretty good model, but okay. So thanks very much for all you're doing, and I'd love to work with you more on this, particularly around the building envelope work and your, I'm sorry, I actually forgot one question. Do you have a list of buildings in your inventory that you know exactly what needs to be done of them, and sort of have of the 800 buildings, here's number 1, 2, 3, or 1 through 100 that we need to do right away. These are our biggest energy sucks. These are our ones that are wasting water. Let's get those done first in a deep retrofit. program. Do we have that available?
Yes, there is a list between us and the infrastructure services life cycle list. There is a fairly comprehensive list. To the deep retrofit of older buildings, as you may have read in here, we are looking at the Glebe Community Center as one to look at the envelope and try to not only make it more energy efficient, but to make it actually more comfortable for occupants in the building. So a building in your ward should be one of our first up.
I saw that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Eglay.
Yeah, just very quickly, Dan, we've sort of been talking about the report up here somewhere. So for the benefit of the people in the gallery, can you sort of walk us through practically what happens? So we have a building, it needs a roof repair, for example, as part of the, because you're talking about trying to keep it in sync with life cycle maintenance, for example. So it needs a roof repair. So what would be the steps? Do we go in there and we say, well, this roof needs to be repaired? Can we look at solar panels? Can we partner up with hydro? Is it a possibility for a green roof? So very practically, how does your program work on the ground?
Chair, very practically, and the reason that it's within the Beam Group is within my department is that, first of all, we try to identify the needs of the building from people who live in them every day. So our maintenance and repair people are able to identify every day what specific buildings need. As Mr. Gantier's team prepares life cycle renewal of those buildings, whether it be an arena or a pool, and they say, we're going to do the roof, the Beam team will often move in and say, while you're up there and the building is closed, perhaps we'll do the light conversion to LED while everything is closed. We can put up scaffolding, we can do all the necessary things. When they're doing the ice plant and they're about to replace the mechanicals, we may provide supplemental funding to do something more energy efficient, to either upgrade the system or provide new technology where that is available, or to include new controls in it. And that is where we're able to minimize building shutdowns, because we try to piggyback as much as we can, especially for the deeper retrofits or projects that are going to require closure of an area of the building, to piggyback them with the life cycle projects so that the public is only inconvenienced once, as much as possible. Sometimes there are other circumstances, but for the most part, we try to blend it in with a planned replacement. That also avoids us going in and trying to do upgrades on old equipment that may not last, since, and so the timing is something we pay a lot of attention to.
So I just want to piggyback on one of the comments you made about making the buildings also more comfortable for the people in them. So I think of sort of the old Nepean model. You've got a lot of those sort of cinder block kind of field house / community buildings. They're cold in the winter, they're hot in the summer. So what sort of things do you look at in that kind of a scenario, with that kind of a build, to not only make it more efficient, but also to make it more usable for members of the community? Chair, we're looking at things like building envelope retrofits, so windows and doors. Some of them are not the best quality. Often were put in without energy concerns when they were first built. Certainly in the example in Councillor Menard's, the Glebe, it's a very old building with with a lot of air infiltration and a lot of issues. But it could be other things. It could be supplemental heating on the floors to make it more comfortable when there's children playing. It could be better air circulation in the building. Some of these buildings that really wasn't thought of when they were built and have very stagnant dead air in them, and make the user experience less than favorable. And so whatever might help in terms of not only energy efficiency but client comfort is looked at as part of this program.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKinney's the only one that didn't talk, so I just figured I'd check to make sure. I don't want to just skip ahead of you. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the questions. Look forward to the work. that your group will continue to do throughout this term of council. So the motion that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend the council, 1, receive the city's 2019-2022 Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan as attached in document 1, and 2, approve an average 8-year payback for energy reduction investments to allow for an expansion of the energy reduction program and more comprehensive building upgrades. Is that item carried? Carried. Thank you. I'm going to ask Dan to stick around. Item number 4 is Councillor McKenney's item, which is single-use plastic bottles at city facilities. Sorry. I just wanted to ask Mr. Chenier to provide some context. Your department responded to the inquiry. Just provide some context on this matter and how it relates with the city's contracts, and just whatever information you can provide us that will be beneficial to this discussion.
Yes, Chair. My department provided the response because we are the department that administers the city's pouring rights contract with Coke. The relevance of that is that plastic beverage bottles are probably one of the highest volume, one-use consumable plastic products in city facilities, if not the most, and certainly one of the most. Of particular attention in terms of this matter is that, of course, part of that vending does include plastic water bottles, as well as other soft drink products. And so what we've tried to put together is a summary of the impact of that and the current contract. We are completed a 5-year pouring rights contract with Coke in December 2016. That contract is now in overhaul because we did not meet minimum vending targets that were established at the time that the contract was developed. And because of that, we continue to offer Coke the opportunity to vend their product until we meet that minimum value, which I believe last December was just under 30,000 units left to sell. We are in the process of getting an update for that number for the 2019 half-year mark. And we are, of course, have been discussing with the councillor and with community groups the opportunity to look at other options as we get out of this contract and what we will replace it with to mitigate the issues that have been identified. The other portion of this is to encourage drinking of tap water, city tap water. And we have taken initiatives in city buildings to add as many water fountains as we can possibly install, as well as floor logos and signage and any opportunity to profile the availability of municipal drinking water. We have gone to models of drinking fountains that now allow the filling of bottles, water bottles, and continue to do so through a program that, as much as possible, will add these units to facilities.
All right, thanks. I know just from the reports, you mentioned around 30,000 cases is the outstanding balance. What's the average a year that we sell? I can probably do the math quickly in my head, but do you have it?
Sorry,
the average.
About 10,000 a year.
Okay, so we're looking at
yes,
possibly 3 more years.
3 more years.
And there's 2 ways out of this contract. It's either to sell the 30,000 cases or to buy out of the contract at $740,000. That's right.
Now we are talking to Coke about possible other options, but nothing. I have nothing to announce today. There may be other solutions that get us there quicker, but yes, essentially to continue to under the contract with the present system. We continue to receive a percentage of sales from those sales as well, and there is a revenue requirement in my budget that was established at the time that this whole pouring rights initiative was brought about at the recommendation of IBM for cost reductions and revenue increases at the city to help the overall tax position of the city. And so built into the departmental budget is an actual target to achieve.
All right. If you convince Coke to start selling vanilla Coke directly outside my office, then you're probably going to be like done this contract in a couple weeks. It's a mild addiction. So what I want to do is first, so thank you for that. I will, yeah, there's not vanilla Coke in my water bottle. It's brisk iced tea. I want to get to the delegations first, and then we'll go to questions from members of council, members of the committee. Should I? Yeah, maybe first what we'll do is, Councillor McKenney, you can introduce your motion, and then I'll rule it out of order, and then we'll move on. No, I'm just joking. I only kid because I only make fun of people that I like, so to speak.
I know, because I have a sense of humor. I'll read out the whole thing so that we know what we're looking at after we hear from our delegation. So thank you, Chair, for this opportunity, for allowing this to come on to today's agenda. Whereas on April 24th, 2019, Ottawa City Council voted to declare a climate emergency in order to deepen our commitment to protecting our economy, our ecosystems, and our community. And whereas city staff, members of council, and the community are about to develop a new solid waste master plan for the City of Ottawa to guide waste diversion and waste reduction measures for decades to come, and whereas the city should lead by example in all waste diversion and reduction measures, and where possible ensure that it follows circular economy and green procurement practices in all its services and programs, and whereas although it is recognized that some single-use plastics are necessary in city programs and services for accessibility, emergency, and medical purposes, and where there is no practical alternative, also, the city runs programs and services using single-use and foam plastic, for which there is an environmentally responsible alternative. And whereas recycling levels of plastic bottles in Ontario are as low as 14%, meaning the majority of plastics are sent to landfill or pollute our waterways. And whereas the use of bottled water over tap water results in high carbon emissions due to the resources used for bottling and transportation. And whereas the municipal water supply is tested more frequently into a higher standard than bottled water, resulting in safer and healthier water, and whereas the City of Ottawa has an outstanding balance of, this of course was taken at the time, but 29,563 cases, equivalent to 709,512 bottles to meet the minimum sales volume commitment in the contract with Coca-Cola Canada as of December 2018. Therefore, be it resolved that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management directs staff to include a plan for city facilities and programs within the Solid Waste Master Plan that will incorporate the elimination of single-use and foam plastics in city programs and services where there is an environmentally responsible alternative, a review of all policies, programs, and practices with respect to green materials, green procurement, and circular economy principles, and be it further resolved that staff be directed to examine the feasibility to incorporate the elimination of discretionary single-use and foam plastic in all of its contracted services, with specific options related to finding alternatives to the current contract with Coca-Cola when the minimum sales volume commitment is fulfilled. And be it further resolved that the City of Ottawa refresh its public education program on the quality and accessibility of municipal water to dispel the misconception that bottled water is of a higher quality than municipal water. Thank you. Carried.
Thank you very much. So I imagine that will be the outcome, but for now, we just wanted to introduce that. And I just wanted to commend Councillor McKenney, because there's a lot of important points in this, and a lot of times we talk about single-use plastics, but we don't necessarily consider all the ramifications of that. So understanding that there's accessibility concerns in these types of situations as well is important. And also just the availability, and we need to recognize that too. So it's not something it's not necessarily a knee-jerk reaction we can do, because what we don't want is to make it difficult for people who visit City Hall or any city facility to get city water. So I mentioned, you know, the water bottles that people can bring in, but we need to be looking, you know, coming up with other ways to provide options so people can actually comport our water. I know, speaking to Tammy Rose, who was Director of Water Services at the city yesterday, something that the University of Ottawa had done, which is actually have vending machines that sold aluminum water bottles, just empty water bottles. Now, question of cost, you know, we have to make sure that that cost is affordable. We don't want to price ourselves out of the market. We need to make sure that the water that we serve at the city is readily available to our constituents. I know that if I was ever to be asked, you know, what's my family doing to reduce plastics, I'd probably be able to quickly answer something like aluminum water bottles. We've tried those water box bottle things, but I find the water just pours right through them. The cardboard box water bottle things just don't seem to hold the water very well. I'm getting off topic. So we'll go right to our delegations. So our first delegation is Eric Schiller. And I wasn't referencing anything in particular when I was talking about the water box bottle things. So Mr. Schiller, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. My name's Eric Schiller. I'm a member of the Ottawa Water Study Action Group, otherwise known as OSAG. I'm sitting here asking myself, is there anyone in this room that doesn't know that we've got a plastic waste garbage problem on our hands? And the answer is probably not. Every day we're hearing new stories about plastic disasters. We're seeing whales dying of eating plastics washing up in the shores. And we're trying to get rid of our unused plastics overseas, and they keep sending it back to us, giving us very bad advertisement for Canada. China doesn't want it, Indonesia doesn't want it, Malaysia doesn't want it. What's going on here? It's not just an environmental problem anymore. Business people are concerned. The business people have said if we keep doing this, the whole ocean will be full of plastics, and in 2050 there'll be more plastics in the water than fish. This is a financial problem. And the European Union has passed a law. They passed it already to get rid of single-use plastics by 2021, and Canada said, hey, we'll do the same thing. Now, it's not all plastics that are bad. I think we should straighten this. It's the single-use plastics that are thrown into the environment. There's good things you can do with plastic. You can make smartphones out of them. You can make it parts of the car. They don't rust, they don't corrode, they last a long time. About 13 years ago, OSAG discovered, knowing that our municipal tap water is excellent and well regulated and of great quality, we were surprised to see the rise of more and more people drinking water from single-use plastics. And we consider this a classic example of the unnecessary, excessive use of single-use plastics, which has got to be changed. When I say that, I know that people can say, well, wait a minute, how? We can't live without plastics. They're hygiene, they're convenient, and well, yes, we can. There are alternatives, and I'm going to end this very short presentation by saying there's two things to answer people who say, well, this isn't practical to get rid of single-use plastics. The answer can be, and I'm only suggesting, reusable water. When I was young, we got our milk in reusable water bottles. You remember once you used to drink beer in reusable bottles. Now we're going tin and plastic. Reusable glass can be one of the answers. Another is paper. You can use paper for all kinds of wrappings. I used to buy fish and chips wrapped in paper. You can make paper for a lot of the wrappings. And most of all, make reusable containers of all kinds. In other words, there is an alternative to this excessive, unnecessary use of single-use plastic. There is an alternative. We can find it. The second thing is, I want to answer people who say, oh, well, we'll just recycle them all. You know, our recycling rates are abysmal. People that really study this objectively say we're recycling about 10% of our plastics. 90% are not being recycled, even though the Canadian Beverage Association gives much more exaggerated figures. They can't be right. The other objective studies say we are not recycling properly. You'd say, well, now, maybe we should just get proper biodegradables and recycle. Even if we get a really good recycling program, we're still taking fossil fuel material out of the ground and using it for things we don't need to. Unnecessary, excessive use of single plastics. We got to stop this. I love this motion because it's written all over it is we're going to eliminate the single use and foam plastics in city programs. We highly support this. We hope that you'll do the obvious thing and pass this. And in fact, as we go around and watch people, we've been in festivals and community things and getting signatures, and I'm going to have someone bring up our list. We're going to give you a gift of about 2,000 signatures, which we gathered over a couple of months. Other people have got even more signatures. People are getting it. We've got a global single-use plastic problem. We've got to change something, and it can start with you by saying, let's cut down single-use plastics in our own municipal buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schiller. Any questions for, so Mr. Schiller, just if you can wait a second there, please. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, sir, for your presentation. Why do you think people buy water in plastic bottles?
Oh, great question. It's convenient. Like, I don't have to worry about, I can go out and just buy it, drink it, and what's more convenient than to throw it over your shoulder and say it's gone? I don't care what happens to it. Convenience, and they have been persuaded that this water is better quality than tap water. That's the real killer. I'm a water engineer. I study this. I take students to the water treatment plant. It's not better. It's fiddled with. They take some minerals out and put some minerals in and say it's better. It is simply not better. I mean, I could go through all the statistics and the minerals and what's doing what, but that's the main reason. They think it's better quality, and hey, it's so cheap. Well, yeah, well, it's $2 for a half liter. That makes $4 a liter, which is more than gas. That's not cheap. But if you go to Walmart or something, you can get it for 8 cents a bottle. But you know what? The price of your water out of the tap is $0.25 cents a liter. Ours is cheaper and ours is better. We've been scammed by branding and advertising.
Thank you. For the first half of my life, there was no onus on having to carry a water bottle in class. Or to meetings, or to events, and I survived. I got by. I drank when I was thirsty at home, or if we were out. And it's not just a commercially marketing that's promoting this. I think there are many industries that are trying to get us to think that I can't leave the house unless it's connected to my belt buckle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know Councillor McCrae, when she chaired this committee, she always, whenever we had these conversations, she always made sure we have this big cube. It's a cubic meter of water. She'd always have it on display with the price of what it costs to fill that cube. Yeah. So just as a, and we had it on display down in City Hall at some point as well, because it's a good message. I mean, I think it's like a couple bucks or something. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marianne McDonald. All right, you can go ahead. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning. To the chair and members of the Standing Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As mentioned, my name is Marianne McDonald, And I'm here because I care about what type of world my grandchildren will inherit. I'm speaking as a member of and with the full support of Water Care Allies of First United Church, a group committed to working in collaboration with others to find solutions to protecting water as a sacred human right. First, I'd like us to take a silent moment to reflect on what is important to each of us and to open our hearts to the possibilities of a waste-free world. In nature, plants using CO2 and water with the help from the sun become miniature powerhouses, producing energy and oxygen for free. You don't see piles of dead plants and animals in nature because they are efficiently returned to the earth as food for another life process to occur. If we constantly bombard and interrupt this process with plastic contamination, then eventually the earth will cease to be able to provide for our needs. The trillium, the Ontario provincial flower, once carpeted the forest floor. It seems now that plastic is the new flower in the forest. We are choking the planet with plastic. Plastic is a man-made product which is of no biological use in the natural system. It cannot be broken down by the current decomposers in nature. Some say, oh, but plastic bottles are recyclable. That's true, and yet so many of them never make it to the recycle bin. And even when plastic is recycled, it is still plastic. Eventually, it goes to landfill. In January 2018, China essentially shut down the recycling programs around the world. The cost to hauling away recyclables continues to rise. Burning the plastic as energy from waste is not the solution either, since in a recent study by Zero Waste Europe, even state-of-the-art incinerators emit dioxins, which are highly toxic and can cause reproductive and developmental problems. There were over 1,000 cleaning the capital projects this spring. From my experience, up to 50% of the trash collected was plastic bottles. I'm sure as a counselor you can think of more effective ways for staff and volunteers in the community to spend their time than picking up unnecessary trash. Disposable convenience seemed to make sense in the past, but with the realities we're facing today and the facts that science is uncovering, disposables are not sustainable. When did it become necessary to have a bottle of water within our reach? And if it is necessary, then a refillable bottle is the answer. I've had this one for over 10 years and have eliminated the need for over 3,000 single-use bottles in that time. When did it become a trend to care about being healthy ourselves, but not about the health of Mother Earth? You can't have the first without the second. This isn't about convenience. This is about slick advertisers giving us a false sense of what is healthy. Peter Gleich, an expert on water policy and director at the Pacific Institute in Oakland, California, said, overall, the average energy cost to make the plastic, fill the bottle, transport it to market, and then deal with the waste would be like filling up a quarter of every bottle with oil. That's insanity. Local aquifers are being depleted by multinational companies making outrageous profits with no respect for the community or the environment. Bottled water is one of the biggest marketing scams ever foisted on the people of Canada. Our cities are mandated by the province to maximize waste diversion. The Water Care Allies believe we need to eliminate the creation of that waste in the first place. One logical step is the elimination of plastic water bottles. In June of 2018, Canada, along with many other countries, adopted the Ocean Plastics Charter, committing to take concrete and ambitious action to address the problem of the marine plastic litter. I suggest to you that the most important action that can be taken to protect the marine environments begins right here at the municipal level by eliminating the source of the plastic waste that ends up in the Ottawa River and eventually in the oceans. Leaders link what they value to how they behave. If they value a healthy environment, including clean air and clean water, then they will make decisions that support those values. All the answers for what a future without plastic bottles will look like may not be immediately obvious. But today I am hopeful, for the sake of my 4 grandchildren, that the members of this committee will show what leadership can be and will do what is right for all citizens of Ottawa by adopting this motion put forth by Councillor McKenney as a first step. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting you mentioned part of your, when you were speaking about how the plastics are lining the forest floor. In March, I was driving on the I-95 in Virginia, and our rooftop carrier popped open and the basketball bounced out down the highway in the middle of nowhere. And so we pulled over and ran back. My wife, who was 7 months pregnant at the time, ran back to get the basketball. She's faster than me. But what we noticed was that the entire highway was just littered with garbage, and mostly things like what you're mentioning, just everywhere. And this was just somewhere in the middle of nowhere between Richmond and Fredericksburg, Virginia, but it was just absolutely littered with garbage along the side of the highway, and most of it is stuff that could have ended up diverted, recycled. I see, obviously, you just put a picture up there. But yes, exactly, same idea.
This one is just along the Ottawa River.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's everywhere.
It's surprising that people just feel that, open the window and get rid of your waste. It's a little bit troubling. So do we have any questions for Ms. McDonald? Seeing none? No, thank you so much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Adam Guzman-Poole.
Hello. Thank you. Well, I have to say I'm just a little nervous doing this.
Don't be nervous. We're just recording it, and there's cameras on you, and we're just all watching you.
Well, that makes me feel much better.
There's nothing to be nervous about.
Thank you very much for having me together today. I'm coming and I'm speaking on behalf of I'm a youth worker as well as an educator, and so I wanted to bring in that perspective of some of the youth that I work with, because they probably wouldn't do this. And so most recently, I had a contract with a school, and we were teaching civics engagement, and it was a program that got youth involved on initiatives and issues that they cared about. And it was completely youth-led, and I was supposed to steward them along the journey of it. And out of the 4 classes that I was teaching, it was pretty crazy how overwhelming every single issue that came up. I had to tally up the issues, and everything, it was all around climate change, pollution. That was the #1 thing that the youth cared about, and because they were afraid. A lot of the youth today are scared about the future. They're scared about the climate, and I think that's why a lot of the reasons that they're so plugged into the phone is because there's it's easier, to not have to feel like the impending doom that's coming up. And so when we started looking at addressing some of these issues and how they would make a change, we came up with some ideas of like certain steps and moving towards it. And there was this one kid there during a class, and he said, yeah, but it's not going to do anything anyway. It's like, it's not going to do it. We're all going to die. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so let's talk about this. So we started discussing, like, it's not going to do anything, and he had no idea, he had no concept to look towards, right? There was no, and so I started throwing in all different stories on Martin Luther King, Gandhi, every different change activist of how people overcame challenges that they didn't think were possible to overcome it, and how we as a society stood up in the face of great challenges like climate change. And he kind of was, he's like, he got soft for a second, and I could tell that some of what I said landed on him. But there was still this kind of edge there, you know? There's still this edge that he still needed hope. You know, he needed something to look to. You know, he needed, and I think that that's what we can do right now, where we can give our future generations hope. You know, single-use plastics it's one step, right, of a much larger thing that we have called climate change. And this is something very tangible, it's accessible, it's that low-hanging fruit that we can grab right now that's very easy, that also gives people that momentum. And when people have hope, they have strength. And that's what we need for our future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to come here today. Do we have any questions for Mr. Guzman-Poole? Seeing none, thank you again. And our final speaker today is Mylene Briggs.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Briggs, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here and voice an opinion that many people agree with. My name is Mylene Briggs. I started living a zero-waste life in 2015 as a single parent. This is my one jar of garbage in which I created in a year. Oh, it was up there, there it is. And chronicled my journey on a blog titled A Dream Lived Greener. Today I'd like to show you all a petition which I created that has almost 13,000 supporters and has been shared over 2,500 times. This happened very much on its own, without much persuasion, and should prove to us today that this is an important issue for many people. Oh, you might have pulled the wrong one. Sorry, he has the wrong file, but that's okay. I'd like to use my time to read a part of that petition. Ottawa is a beautiful city, a city many of us have had the opportunity to witness incredible growth and change over the years. With Ottawa being the nation's capital, we believe that we should be a city that leads and inspires change that is beneficial not only to its citizens, but to our community around us. We believe that it is our responsibility as citizens of Ottawa to protect and care about our city. Caring for it and protecting it shows great respect for our city, as well as ourselves. It is no secret that we are facing a global waste issue, but we believe we can work together to prevent further waste and create a long-lasting and impactful change. Currently, our landfills are full. With our city growing larger, we don't have the capacity to hold the increasing amount of waste. While the green bin and recycling is helpful, we believe we can further reduce our waste by eliminating the use and sale of single-use disposable plastic bags and bottles. Bless you. Banning single-use disposable plastic items such as cutlery, plates, and cups. Why is this important? One, it will help to reduce plastic waste in the landfill. We can move to biodegradable items that can also be composted. Plastic is not biodegradable, as you all know. It supports the use of petroleum, blocks drainage systems, is harmful to wildlife. Most of us have seen those photos with all the sea life and animals with their bellies full of plastic. And it ruins the aesthetics of the city's streets and parks. Plastic also has a global detrimental impact. Places such as my homeland in the Philippines receive Canada's plastic waste, and they are not properly equipped to efficiently dispose of or recycle such items. This means much of that plastic then finds its way into the oceans, rivers, and water supplies. I've seen firsthand the increasing amount of plastic pollution in the oceans where my family still lives. And of course, the fourth reason is everything that you guys have stated today, as well as the delegates. Our city now has our firstly named zero waste grocery store, New Grocery. We have a Zero Waste Ottawa Resources Facebook group with over 600 members, and we have a Plastic-Free Ottawa Facebook group with almost 200 and still growing. We have over 12,000 supporters of this petition, which I was going to show you, which means we are a community that is actively seeking an alternative solution, and we are seeking ways to reduce our waste. We are leaders in Ottawa, striving for change, and we care deeply about the city, the wildlife, the waters, and the environment in which we live. So please help us reduce waste by eliminating single-use, disposable plastics and bottles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. While you're speaking, I went and checked out your blog.
Oh.
I think it was about dreamlivedgreener.ca.
Yeah.
And then you also have Dream Lived Green on Twitter, so
yes,
check that out. All right, thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Ms. Briggs? Seeing none, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, so that is it for the speakers. Do we have anyone on committee that wishes to speak? Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like staff to
Just get lights.
Dissect this motion.
Oh, Matt says we can't do lights right now because he's busy doing other stuff. Come on, Matt. Sorry, go ahead. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like staff to dissect the three therefore clauses and just explain to the committee what they understand is being asked and the feasibility or the likelihood that we can implement all three. So I just want to make sure that the mover's intent and the staff's understanding are the same.
Chair, I can start with my part. Some of this relates to the waste management plan, which will not be me, but Marilyn is here and can help with that. In terms of the programming and operating impacts, I see no issues with this. Our part of it, I think, is relatively straightforward and simple: elimination of single-use plastics. It aligns with the direction we're going in with respect to things like the pouring rights and the other policies that we're developing. And so from the therefores, as it relates to the work that we're doing, it's consistent with the direction we're heading in, and it seems to be reasonable in terms of timing and exceptions for circumstances and those kinds of things.
But my understanding, we're not just talking about vending machines. The mover is talking about a plan for city facilities and programs. So we must use plastic water bottles in other circumstances other than allowing members of the public to come into a community center or a library to buy water.
Chair, generally in programming, no. I mean, that has been over the years pretty well phased out. There may be exceptions, certainly in emergencies, and when, you know, as our role of doing reception and lodging for emergencies, then yes, and sometimes we do rely on water bottles. We do have some facilities that have water quality issues where we rely on water bottles as certainly as an interim solution. For the most part in programs, and the foam piece of this is perhaps a new thing that I want to have a closer look at. But by and large, single-use plastic is not a big piece of our programming. This calls for us to do a review, and we will. And I suspect that in the programming context, there are good alternatives, whether you're talking about arts and crafts supplies or support to sports activities. By and large, there appear to now be some good alternatives to those. And there appears to be a progressive approach here where we can do a review and find alternatives and implement them as we go along. And so the therefores for the parts that my department is responsible for seem to be doable in the course of time.
Okay, I do believe that the city has a responsibility to take action, and even though it may be a small, minor step, it is in the right direction, and I will be supporting this today. I was telling my colleague that I do believe there's some personal responsibility that people have to take on themselves, and as adults and even older youth, there are choices, and if people make bad choices, that's one thing, but then this is a step where we can to take a step forward. I mean, there are many products sold in our city that come in plastics that used to not come in plastic. Soda when I was younger, grocery shopping with my father, soda, salad dressing, you name it. We have converted the old ketchup bottle, trying to get ketchup out. We have converted basically all of these types of packaging from glass to plastic. And I assume it's all down to expense. That is what has driven this. So a broader motion, a more even bolder motion would be to look at, again, packaging. And maybe you can explain and just remind this committee about the provincial onus that's coming to make producers responsible for the packaging that they create, that it must be recycled, that they are going to be contributing towards the cost of recycling in this province. Can you just give a brief statement on that item?
Morning, Councillor. Yes, the province is moving towards individual producer responsibility, which will require the manufacturers and importers of products and packaging to be fully recyclable, and they will be accountable for the cost of that proper management of those products.
And can you just remind us the timelines?
Currently, we're expecting some direction by the end of the summer from the provincial government. The government appears to be moving very rapidly on environmental issues, especially with regards to waste management. So we are expecting to see some details by the end of the summer.
So I do think this is significant. This was an initiative started by the former provincial government. Current one has embraced it, thankfully, and are moving forward on that. My last question is just regarding the promotion of city water, drinking water, which I agree with the chair is of top quality, best in the world. My understanding from the report is we spend $100,000 per year to promote city tap water. I just want to confirm that number. And what does promotion entail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. In 2019, we have a budget of $100,000 for water service promotion and one dedicated staff member that coordinates various innovative ways to educate the community about our exceptional drinking water. Our multi-pronged plan focuses on building on our successes and looking to the future. Our plan has an educational component with a goal of teaching students and residents about our water process to build an appreciation on how clean and safe our water is, and includes inviting residents to our water purification plants through doors open, tours, and virtual experiences. It also includes promoting the quality of our drinking water through educational tools and targeted programs, such as water bottle distribution, I Drink Tap Water buttons, and a K-6 enhanced school program planned for this fall, all in an effort to move people from bottled water to tap water. The outreach component of our plan includes promoting water and drinking water throughout the year at fairs, public and councillor-hosted events, and youth activities. And we're also looking at enhancing our use of technologies to support our campaigns and educational activities, including Twitter, Facebook, and ottawa.ca. Finally, but not least, we are working closely with our city partners in public health and recreation, culture, and facility services to promote tap water as the best choice for all residents.
Thank you. Are you the dedicated staff person that is leading this promotion?
Through you, Chair, I have a dedicated staff member as part of our team.
Someone else? Okay. Is the city collecting stats on why people are buying bottled water as opposed to using the city's clean, award-winning tap water?
Through you, Chair, could I ask Director of Water Services to please provide that historical information? Thank you.
Councillor, I think that's a really good question, and in order to do that, we would like to take some of the funds that we have in our promotional budget to do a survey and to get the answer to why do people choose bottled water. So currently we don't have a survey result or statistics, but that is something that it's important for us to have in order to build a robust promotion campaign, so we know what it is that we're up against in terms of messaging.
And I think, Mr. Chair, that is a key thing for me, is I think taking the step today on the motion is smart and wise, and I will be supporting it. But if people say, well, Walkerton is at the back of my mind, and I'm really afraid that some of the issues from that experience could happen again, and I would just rather buy bottled water, then that's one thing. If people witness water fountains in some of our public facilities that may not be upkept or they're dirty, that's something we can address and hammer out. So I applaud efforts to get to the root of the problem and find out from people why they have made this. Because all the stats I've seen indicate continued consumption, increased consumption for bottled water. So something is driving that. And I think it's more than just sort of slick marketing. I think there's some other costs or reasons behind that that are motivating people to make that switch. Thank you.
Thank you. Just reading this, apparently the University of Waterloo did a study on why people buy bottled water, and their result was a fear of dying plays a role in people buying bottled water. Hopefully we find better results than that. Good job, Waterloo. Councillor Eglai.
Well, I think the first gentleman had it right. I think it has a lot to do with convenience. I don't think anybody's ever died of convenience or inconvenience. So I'm going to be supporting this motion. I think it's a very positive step forward. But I have a couple of quick questions for staff. Mr. Cheney, you talked about some of our facilities where water quality was an issue, and therefore we may use bottled water at those facilities. I know that there is some technology out there where you essentially have portable water stations. For example, I know there's a local company in town, Aquaholics, has something called an Aquapod, which allows water to be dispensed, much like our water fountains, but it comes in a cart-like format. I'm just wondering if we've looked at some alternatives such as that, as opposed to using bottled water at some of these more compromised facilities in terms of the water quality, or if we haven't, could we?
Mr. Chair, we have and Aquapods is I think a relatively new design for these, but there have been various options, and the city has worked with them primarily for big gatherings, things like festivals, and I know we've had it here at Mariandura Plaza and at other locations where there's been large festival gatherings, and increasingly we're finding the festival community is buying into reducing their waste and encouraging that use. The facilities I talked about are year-round facilities, and even though these aquapods are primarily outdoors and convenient, some of our facilities have, for example, lead plumbing and a level of lead in the pipes that makes the water non-potable, or have high sulfur and those kinds of things. And they're year-round facilities where large tanks in the building itself would generally not work. And that's where, when I was referring to water bottles, it was primarily those types of facilities that had, not just that the water didn't taste good, there are real health issues with drinking it. But certainly we're interested in looking at aquapod and other variations of that and encouraging them for when people use city facilities for large events, encouraging that use to minimize the waste that we collect here when those kinds of things happen.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, and maybe a little bit outside of this report, but you know, we've said repeatedly that our water is the best water in North America, and it's tested that way time after time. One of the things that I personally find frustrating is when visitors come to Ottawa and they stay in our hotels, one of the first things you see when you walk into the hotel room is bottled water, you know, courtesy of whatever hotel. Enjoy yourself. Have we ever done any kind of outreach with the tourism industry to, for example, work up a program that instead of a water bottle, there's something like this there with a sign that says Ottawa water, the best in North America, enjoy, fill up. And again, I guess it's a little bit out of this report, but it's something that could even be I think, a tourism draw. Come to Ottawa where it's, you know, we're environmentally conscious and the water is good. So have we ever had those sorts of discussions? Because again, I find that frustrating that in a city with as water as good as we have, that's what visitors are met with as soon as they walk into the room. Not to use our water, but to use bottled water.
Mr. Chair, we were aware a number of years ago where Weston Hotel actually had little cards saying, you know, we don't provide bottled water. Our city delivers excellent drinking water. And so we were really pleased to see that some hotels do take a bit of a leadership approach. But I think part of our outreach and looking at ways of promoting that, I think it's a good suggestion for us to take that back and do some outreach with the hotels to understand, do they have water quality concerns within the building, as Mr. Chenier was referencing to? Do they have old plumbing fixtures? And so perhaps there's opportunities to work with them and have them reduce their single-use plastic water bottles as well.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that offline, because I think that's low-hanging fruit that we might be able to take advantage of. And you know, this is clearly within our jurisdiction, what my colleague has brought forward, and it's a great idea, but that's part of the puzzle. The puzzle's much bigger than that. There's a lot of moving parts, and the more partners we can bring on to reducing the single-use plastics, the better we're going to be. So maybe we can talk a little bit later. Thank you.
It's a good point. Think about if you know of anyone that goes to somewhere like Mexico, what's the first thing you say to them? Don't drink the water. So we can have the reverse thing here. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I just want to thank the mover of the motion. I think it's important we're passing this here today, I hope. One thing that's important is governments acting. And so in this case, we're acting internally in the City of Ottawa, but of course the bigger challenge exists outside of our walls. And so maybe you could walk, for the sake of the gallery and everyone else, walk through the process for our review of plastics, single-use plastics, foam, other containers. The past council, the past committee had a motion that came forward that was looking at an investigation of those things for the city as a whole, whether we could ban single-use plastics or start to phase them out. Can you walk me through, you know, that motion, where that is, and how it relates to the solid waste management plan that's coming up next week?
Yes. So next week we'll be bringing a report to committee. It's the roadmap report on the solid waste master plan, which is a 30-year plan as to where the city is going to go with regards to policy and planning pieces around solid waste. We will be seeking approval for the scope and framework of that roadmap, of that master planning process. And as part of that master plan, we'll be opening the door to all policies, ideas, concepts, tools that we can use to further our waste diversion objectives within the city. So it'll be a three-phased approach, and we will be reporting back to council throughout that master planning process. It will involve public engagement, public consultation, public outreach, and we'll look at all options and then report back.
Okay, so you're incorporating the motion that was passed previously into the solid waste master plan discussions that'll go on. That's good to hear, because I think, you know, some producers are acting on their own, some facilities are acting on their own. I just spoke with OSEG and Lansdowne, and they're going to be eliminating plastic straws, it looks like, from some of their facilities. But it's only so much that they do unless governments act and say you need to do these sorts of things. So I'm happy to hear that it'll be part of the solid waste master plan discussions and engagements in consultation with community. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Kathy, did you want to wrap up on that? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I do want to also just take quick minute to thank the folks that came out today from OSEG and others who have been, you know, talking about plastics and what they're doing to the environment and the energy and waste that it costs to even produce plastics. And I know that for a long time it's been a lonely discussion. So I do thank you for your persistence and for being here. Do want to thank the chair for his leadership on this. I've worked with him over the last couple of weeks to get this motion up for debate here today, and to my colleagues for all of your questions, and to staff, of course, and of course for the water bottles, which were a nice surprise this morning. I once belonged to a book club. I only went twice, but and I quit. And only once, but one of the books that they suggested reading was "You're Not Sick, You're Just Dehydrated," and I kind of laughed at the woman who brought it up, but hope she's not here. But it was interesting because from that moment on, I realized just, you know, what the role that water plays in our lives, in our everyday lives, and it is often true. You know, if you're not feeling great, if you're if you're a little bit dehydrated, if you're if you're have a cold, or you need liquids, like just what water does for you and for your body, and it's telling that we're here today. In 2019, because I think similar to my colleague, Councillor Brockington, I went through the first at least half of my life not really thinking about water and thinking about, I guess I drank it when I needed to. And now we really are kind of stuck on having water bottles with us and ensuring that we are drinking enough water. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. There's nothing. Water is good for you, but it took that extra step where we were convinced that we had to drink better water than what's in our municipal systems, and that included plastic. And if we just even think about this contract, and I'm certainly not here to criticize the contract, because I don't think the staff who signed the contract are even here today, but it will result in hundreds of thousands of water bottles just from city facilities alone over the last, I guess it's now 8 years. So this motion really is about looking forward. It's about examining the feasibility to eliminate all discretionary single-use plastic and foam plastics as well. I think that people want to be able to come to our city facilities and expect that they're not using foam for, events, that we don't have water bottles or selling water bottles unnecessarily outside of our, in our hockey rinks or in any of our facilities. And it's, but it also is about making sure that we do, and we've touched upon this, and I thank my colleagues for this, the public education piece, because I know we have a dedicated staff person, but the actual amount of money that we spend on our education, public education program is you know, I think it's like 0.0001% of our overall budget, and we can do a little bit better. So I'm here arguing for a little bit more money for you as well. That'll, you know, that's for a different day. But we really do. We really have to make the effort to let people know that we have, you know, the best drinking water that you can get, and that it's actually healthier for you. And as a city, we have to take pride in that. So I thank you all for the discussion today, and look forward to moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just noticing these coasters. There's little tidbits of information on the back. Someone I didn't know. More than 15 breweries use Ottawa tap water as their main ingredient. That's good. But it's interesting the things that you don't realize until you start looking at it. And the city obviously plays a role, but it's so much bigger than just the city. Even just in the last month, due to my mangled finger due to an axe incident, and then also my the birth of my I don't know, 18th child. I spent a lot of time in the hospital in the healthcare industry, and it's incredible how much waste is actually out there. Just my wife was big on chewing ice chips leading up to and after the birth of our son. But every time I went to get a cup, it's just a stack of styrofoam cups next to the ice machine at the hospital. It's just something as simple as that. Like, why is that's what they have there? And then just with every time I had to get this mangled finger that I have changed, it's a constant waste. That it's all single-use stuff. I mean, it has to be. There's medical issues. There's different things. But that's, to your point, is that there are exceptions, but the industry also needs to, whatever industry also needs to look at how can we best, you know, address those exceptions, even the sanitary issues, but not create so much extra waste. All right, so, but I think this also plays well. The reason why it fits here today is it plays well into what our meeting is going to be next week, because the discussion on the waste master plan is going to be broad. It's not precluding anything to begin with. It's saying that we are going to look at all options as a city from the perspective of waste and how we can reduce and reuse, and thinking that if we were to rank all of our options, that option 5,622 would be a landfill. That's sort of the way we look at it, is that we have to be doing everything we can, and reducing the amount of waste that we create is first and foremost, especially from the producer perspective. So on Councillor McKenney's motion? Carried. Thank you. And received on the report as amended, I guess. Thanks. So that is that. In-camera items, there are none. Notices of motion, there are none. Inquiries, none. Other business, none. Adjournments?
Motion to adjourn.
Carried. So our next meeting is Tuesday, June 25th. It's a special meeting to deal with the waste master plan and all things waste. Thank you.